These are the lovely myeloma warriors that have decided to join us. Sanetta Jordan, Thomas Good, Joan Rodriguez, and Deborah Bryan. Um, but clinical trials are often misunderstood. A lot of times they're looked at as the last resort or not something that maybe I'm eligible for, or I didn't know I could participate. I don't know how to go about looking for a clinical trial and those types of things. So hopefully we can address some of those things in our conversation this afternoon. Um, there are a lot of fears associated with clinical research and clinical trials and things of that nature. But the reality is, clinical research is how we advance treatment options and improve outcomes for everyone. So we want to make sure that we, as African Americans, are right in line with that because we have to make things happen when it comes to finding a cure in multiple myeloma and other blood cancers as well. Now, one of the problems is we often hear from clinical trials from doctors and healthcare workers and people like that. And I think it's important that we hear from real people that have participated, are participating in research. So that's what we hope to bring to you today. Um, I'm going to read these wonderful bios of the panelists that we have with us today. First up, we have Joan Rodriguez. Joan is a mother, wife, and a Christian. Her journey with multiple myeloma began in 2003, starting with the diagnosis of MGUS, progressing to high-risk smoldering, and eventually active multiple myeloma. She's participated in a 2-year clinical trial that resulted in a partial response. Her treatment journey has included an autologous stem cell transplant, CAR-T therapy, and currently a bispecific therapy. Over the years, she has received drugs from every myeloma treatment class, undergone radiation, and had multiple surgeries. It's been quite a marathon, and through it all, Joan's strength has come from God. Amen. So Zanetta Jordan lives in the North Atlanta suburb area with her husband, 2 teenage sons, and her mom lives with them also. She enjoys reading, music, binge watching TV shows and movies. She was diagnosed with high-risk smoldering myeloma in 2021 after an emergency gallbladder surgery. She's recently completed a clinical trial for high-risk smoldering myeloma at Emory Winship Cancer Institute in Atlanta. Zanetta's health journey continues as she strives for improved overall health and wellness. Although being a new participant to research panel discussion, Zanetta always has been passionate about providing insight and family support to ensure they receive quality health care. Ms. Deborah Brown, rebuilding the temple and living life that matters are her two signatures for saying that we're birthed during a period of extreme illness and disease. During this period, Dee discovered and practiced the natural, spiritual, and holistic tools that brought her back from the brink of death. From this experience, Dee transformed her life mentally, spiritually, physically, and professionally. Dee has served and helped many diverse communities through her interfaith and integrative ministry. As a health educator, certified life, health, and spiritual coach, these services are tailor-made for her prospective clients' specific needs. She's given her time and talents to many charitable causes and events. Mentoring women and children have the highest rank on her list of passions and professional goals. Thomas grew up in Virginia. After high school, he joined the United States Navy as an aviation electronics technician. His love for exercise led him to receive his master's in sports and health science. Thomas was diagnosed with myeloma back in 2005. He's undergone 3 stem cell transplants. He began his advocacy at his clinic by speaking with other patients about their upcoming stem cell transplants. In 2014, Thomas became a patient ambassador for one of the pharmaceutical companies. And participating in this role has allowed him to tell us his story and encourage other patients to live their lives to their fullest. Thomas spends time at the gym, his haven for exercise and social networking. When he's not at the gym or cycling, he spends time with his family and friends. He also runs a support group in the area and is on the International Myeloma Foundation's African American Initiative Advisory Council. So we're going to jump in. You got to know a little bit about these panelists today. We're going to just jump in and get the conversation started. And I wanted to get started with, I want to talk about smoldering multiple myeloma. And many people don't know that there are trials available for those that are dealing with smoldering multiple myeloma. So for our audience who may not realize that, that's an option for them, I want to start with Zanetta. So Zanetta is a smoldering myeloma patient. And I think I need to stop sharing here. Is that right, Narsal? You guys are going to have to help me through this. I told you I'm not the tech person. Okay.
No worries, Val. What do you need?
All right. So we're going to start with Zanetta. I don't see her on the screen.
Okay, I do see her. I will split.
You see her? Well, spotlight Miss Zanetta. Zanetta, we start with you. Hello. Yeah, so tell us a little bit about, how did you decide to participate in a clinical trial? How did that come about as a smoldering myeloma patient? Because we don't always hear about smoldering patients participating in clinical research. Oops, I think you're muted. You're muted.
Yeah.
Are you muted? He's not muted, but we can't hear you.
No, we cannot see you, but you're not muted.
Still can't hear you.
No.
And that's okay. We can, maybe somebody can help her with her audio. I want to keep the conversation going because we are, let's see if, we can't hear you. Zanetta, try just backing out and then logging back in. Maybe that will help kind of reset some things. I'm going to come back to you though. Okay. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead. We're gonna come back to Zanetta because she has a unique story, and I definitely want to make sure that you all hear that. But I want to ask this of all the panelists: how and why did you decide to participate in clinical research study? So I want to start with Joan. You're first in my corner here. What was that conversation was like? Did you bring that up? Did your doctor bring it up? Tell us a little bit about your experience there.
Hello, everybody. Sweltering in heat in Boston here. The conversation was with my longtime multiple myeloma specialist. She had been my doctor for more than 10 years. And she said to me, we need to treat you. And I have two clinical trials here that I think would work really well for you. And so my initial concern was no, don't want to do any kind of treatment. But I knew at that time there had to be something because I didn't want to progress. So when she brought it up, I was all in.
So where were you, Joan? Had you relapsed or how early was this in your treatment? Had you experienced a relapse yet before the conversation came up?
Yes, so I had received a few relapses before this conversation came up, and we this trial just kind of fit to where I was. I was early in my journey, and I had relapsed, and we were in the center, and we were looking. I knew I had to find something. I knew we needed to treat me a different way, and so when I came in for a talk with her, we talked about the clinical trial. I thought she was going to give me some standard drug treatment options, but instead she had these two clinical trials that she thought would fit really well with me.
Okay, Thomas? Look, Thomas is in the treatment chair. This is dedication, guys. Thomas is receiving treatment today, so we gotta give him a big shout out there.
Hey, thank you guys for having me as well. When I was relapsed, it was immediately right after my first stem cell transplant. It was autologous. And my doctor came to me with the suggestion of a research study because, in 2007, there wasn't a lot of options out there for us after your stem cell transplant. So she talked to me about it. She presented it to me. And, at that time, I wanted to, first of all, overcome the statistic of what they said of people living, newly diagnosed patients living only 3 to 5 years after being diagnosed. Because at that time, that's what it was for newly diagnosed patients. And secondly, I always wanted to help the people that came after me. I knew what a clinical trial was, and I knew that the research from me is going to help the patient behind me. So those were one of the two main reasons that I did it. And then I didn't know a lot about trials, so I had 100% faith into my care team. And we talked about it, and then, we just came to the conclusion that, it was for me because, hey, I wanted to live, I wanted to overcome the statistics, and I wanted to do my part.
Thank you, Thomas. Dee? Oh, you're muted, Dee. Unmute
There we
yourself.
go.
Yeah.
Hi, can everyone hear me now?
Mhm.
Can hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, good evening. My decision came after my 2023 first stem cell transplant that I had. I had an autogene transplant in 2023. And of course, I thought I was on my way to living the life that I was dreaming of. So about 6 or 7 months after that, I started having issues. And it came up that I had pretty much relapsed from where I was at. And even though I had heard of clinical trials again, it wasn't in my mind to really consider doing a clinical trial. But my doctor approached me, and I had a great, great team like Thomas, and he talked about it. And I said, well, let me think about it. I said, because in my mind, I had not planned on doing another transplant. I mean, it was just like out of space for me. So anyway, I was approached with doing CAR T cell, which was my second stem cell transplant, and it was a clinical trial. I have participated in clinical trials in the past, but for other health concerns many, many years ago. And I've always chosen to participate in a clinical trial because I wanted to leave my footprints on the planet. And hopefully they would be footprints that would be positive for someone coming behind me. And statistics are high for African Americans not participating in clinical trials. That's how come sometimes the medicines aren't tailor-made to our situation. So once I made the decision to participate in a clinical trial, things jumped off pretty quickly. But I read a lot of the fine print. I did a lot of research and talked to a lot of people before I came to a solid yes. And once I did became a solid yes, things started rolling. So as of this present moment, I am still in the clinical trial. It doesn't end technically until November, and they will be following me probably from 8 to 15 years from now.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing. Did we get Zanetta back? I want to give her opportunity to respond as well. Is she back?
Are you able to hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Okay, and I'm sorry, what question are we answering?
So I'm going to go back to the first question, but right now we were just talking about how did you decide to participate in a trial? How did that come up? Did your doctor bring it to you? Did you have to ask about clinical trials?
So when I started my process, I was diagnosed out of the blue. Well, I guess it's always out of the blue. But my doctor, a wonderful doctor at Emory, she mentioned a trial. but she said, well, we don't have any openings, but I might have some openings coming up. So it was about a year before I got into the trial. So I used that time to research, as Deborah stated. I was just researching. I talked to my family. I talked to my primary doctor. I just wanted to make sure I did my due diligence. I knew what I was potentially getting into. And when my time came and she called and said they had a spot, by then I was all in. It wasn't even a doubt in my mind to do it. Anything to prolong, because I'm still smoldering. So the longer we can keep it that way, the better. So.
Yeah. And it's even good that your doctor, as a smoldering patient, that was brought to you. But I think each one of you has said the conversation started with your doctor. And we know that's not always the case. A lot of times people never hear about clinical trials. So it just goes to show that you all had good doctors, and it sounds like you had a good relationship with them. But one thing that you mentioned, and I think everybody's mentioned a little bit about this, is that you did some research. Can you tell us a little bit about maybe what did you research for somebody that may not know? After that process of, I think I want to do a trial, what are some of the things you did some research on? Zanetta, I'll start with you on that one. What were some things that you looked at in research?
So for me, being a patient at Emory, they're known for, the trials down there. So my doctor directed me in the right place to start looking. I actually looked at some of the trials she had already worked on and just kind of went from there. I found this site, HealthTree Foundation, and that's really where I got a lot of my information from here. And again, just looking through the trial information on the clinical trial website.
You went to clinicaltrials.gov?
I did.
Ooh, great, so you.
Yeah, I had nowhere else to start. This was all new for me. I didn't know what else to do. So I just started at the very beginning.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, you're in the audience there. You do not have to go to clinicaltrials.gov. We have a clinical trial finder. IMF has a
Yeah.
wonderful relationship. Spark Q there are places out there that have specific myeloma trials. So don't waste a lot of times looking on clinicaltrials.gov. Not a bad
Yeah.
site, but there's things that are better there. Joan, how about you? Did you do some research after you had that conversation?
No, I didn't. I just wholeheartedly trusted my doctor and trusted my team, and I really didn't. I knew what a clinical trial was, but I did not do any searching.
Okay. Dee, how about you?
Yes, I'm always a researcher person. I went back to college at 51 to become a health educator, and one of the things they taught us was to research everything. So I'm the type of person, I'm gonna look in every direction I can. Not only did I look under HealthTree, not only did I look under clinicaltrials.gov, I looked up under Myeloma International, I looked under the Cancer Society, cancer.gov. I looked into all the schools I had already graduated from. Duke University had great studies. I looked under that. Emory had great studies. Quite a few things. And because I'm also a holistic practitioner, I looked through my own books to see, what could help me. Not only was I researching about the human body, I'm also researching about nutrition, diet, exercise, even the doctors that was on my team, I already knew them, but I also wanted to dive a little bit more into some of their background. Plus, my doctor himself, I am a patient at Huntsman. So Huntsman has a library, so you can go into a lot of clinical or hospital libraries to do some things too. So he also had given me a list of how many clinical trials he had done and how many clinical trials he had done up on the myeloma. And then the top thing for me was, okay, how many African Americans were in these studies and what was the results and blah, blah, blah. So I'm the type of person, I want to know everything from the food to the hair to the eyes. You know, how does it affect me? How will I feel? So mine is a little bit more extensive, but if you don't want to go that extensive, go directly to HealthTree and go to the sites that your clinic gives you to get the information that you need.
Thank you. Thank you all for sharing that. So I want to kind of move in now. So you guys were ready to go when your doctor talked to you about clinical trials. Were there any hesitations that you had? And when we think of clinical trials, a lot of times in the Black community, we think of, we have those fears of randomizations or, I'm not going to I hear it a lot. I'm the sugar pill. I'm going to get a sugar pill, or I don't want to be a guinea pig. It doesn't sound like that was something that you all were concerned about. Was that, or did you have other hesitations or things that were on your mind that, you may have been a little bit uneasy about things before really jumping in? Were there anything, Joan, can you speak to that? Did you have any?
The only concern that I had was I wanted to know how long trial was going to last. And she said 2 years. And I thought, that's a long time to be on treatment. And so that gave me a little pause for concern. The other hesitancy I had, which doesn't have anything to do with the clinical trial, but I was hesitant about being on dexamethasone again because I've had such a rough time with it and it did a lot of damage to my big body that I really wanted to know, is dexamethasone a part of the clinical trial? And the answer is yes. The dexamethasone was going to be part of the clinical trial. It is part of the line protocol, so it wasn't able to escape it. But those were my two concerns.
Mm.
Okay. Thomas, how about you? Did you have any concerns or anything you were a little unsure about?
Not really, not at the first one. The first transplant, the first clinical trial, I should say, was right after the first stem cell transplant. And like I said, I had 100% faith in my care team. By the time the second clinical trial came around, which was my second um, allogeneic transplant, I was more familiar with the process. I was more familiar with what we was looking for, what they was looking for. This is going to go back to the first question that you had. I didn't do research because I didn't know what to research. Now that I do know what to research, I'd probably look for the medications that they're having. I would look into those medications and check the side effects from them. So those are what would be one of the things that I would do as a researcher now if someone is looking for clinical trials or looking for what to look for in clinical trials. Or I would find one of the old trials under that same medicine and then look at the survival rate, the overall response rates, um, progression free for survival, anything that comes back from survival, and see what the statistics are for that. So I don't have any hesitations. I didn't have any hesitations. Like I said, I wanted to overcome that stigma of living 3 to 5 years of being a newly diagnosed patient. And then like Deborah said, I wanted my footprint to be right there behind hers. And as we're walking and everybody else is growing in myeloma based on what we have done and prior to them.
You guys are setting a precedence. That's why I'm so glad that I have you here with because of that reason right there. Zanetta, did you have any hesitations that you want to talk about?
I did. I had a lot of questions. And the questions that I didn't think of, my husband thought of. I think it's important to have somebody with you when you're having those conversations with the doctors because it was overwhelming. It was a lot of information. I didn't quite know how to process it at first. So having that additional voice in the room was important for me. Things maybe I missed. One of his, you asked earlier about a sugar pill. That was what my husband asked. So that's exactly what he asked. So that was important to know what I was going to be getting, what they were going to be giving me.
How was
So
that
yeah,
explained to you? Because, you know, we often think of that. How did they explain to you that you're not getting the sugar pill? What did they say?
I will say my team is amazing. My doctor, because it was overwhelming for me, she even went as far as to draw pictures just on the white paper that was in the room. So she put it in layman's terms for me because I'm not a doctor. I was in the medical field many, many decades ago, but not obviously to the degree of these specialists. So it was important that I was understanding the language, and that was important for me. I didn't, because I've had doctors in the past that kind of talked over my head, and I didn't want that. So it was important for me to be in a team that made it easy for me to understand. Yeah.
Two things I want to touch on, because making it easy to understand, and this wasn't in part of our what we had talked about, but I want to talk a little bit about consent forms and things being in a language that you could understand. What was you all's experience with that? You know, the consent forms. I know oftentimes it's big 29, 30 pages worth of literature that you're going through. What was that like for you? Thomas, I'll go ahead and get started with you there.
You know, back then it was horrible, you know, because you have all of these big words that you're reading and you don't understand what you're looking at. Now it's semi better, because of patients like us. You know, we're on a lot of panels that they listen to our voice. So a lot of the consent forms now are written in plain language summaries. So, you know, they're easy to understand and you don't have to worry. It takes away from the worry because you know exactly what you're getting, you know exactly what you're going through. And then it would be a few things where you have to ask the doctor, but it's a lot easier than how it was back in the day.
Would you all agree to that? Joan, would you? Yeah. Okay, so good. That's good. I mean, that means that there have been a lot of improvements. And like you said, Thomas, they're listening to what's going on. They're putting that patient voice out there. I wanted to touch base on, you guys have been brave and you said yes to that. What's your family support like? Did your family support you and say, yes, I'm glad you're leaving that footprint? Or did you get some of those questions like, you're gonna do what? Why would you do that? Tell me a little bit about what that was like. Thomas, I'll start with you and then we'll go to Dee and Joan and Zanetta there.
Yeah, my family was 100% helpful with me throughout all three of my stem cell transplants, one autologous, two allogeneic. They went to the point where they would make a calendar and say who's coming to North Carolina to sit with me, and everybody would take time out of their lives and come spend a whole week with me while I was going through treatment. Uh, we all, even though you know, we're far apart, I keep them in the loop of what's going on with my treatment. So shared decision making is 100% uh capable. I mean, is what we do, what I do 100% with my family. You know, I like to keep them in the loop of everything that's going on so they know exactly what to do or when I need them so they'll be prepared. So family has been an integral part of my recovery, physically, mentally, and emotionally, and is one of the things that I encourage everybody to do. You know, get your family involved. Make sure you have shared decision making with your children, with your siblings, and you know, make this something that you do together so that keeps them in the loop.
And when you told them that you were going to participate in a trial, were they all for that? Were they behind you? What kind of questions did they have?
Most definitely. They was for me all together. They knew that I was a pillar of strength, first of all. So it's like whatever that they presented to me, I presented it to them in a better way to make sure they understood that my outcome is going to be where we want it to be.
Thank you for sharing. Dee, about you?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
With the first transplant I have, unfortunately for me, because I live so far away, I'm in Utah. Most of my family is spread it around the world. So I wasn't privy to having physical family around me. But everybody stayed in communication through social media, telephone, and whatever. And I made sure with my first transplant that all my family members, especially my two older children, I have two sons, that they understood why I was doing it, understood the language. And on top of that, I made sure I had all my duckies in order, which I tell a lot of family they need to have that last will conversation, living will, insurance, and all that kind of stuff to make sure that's in place. A lot of times family members don't want to talk about that because immediately they hear the word cancer, and a lot of people immediately think, oh my God, they on their way out, they finna die. And I assured everybody I plan to be on the earth, I ain't going nowhere, but I want to make sure my duckies was in order. So I put my wishes in place. I sent papers out to who needed to have them. Family members and extended family members got papers in case anything happened. Even though I didn't have physical family to come with the first transplant, I had girlfriends that came cross country to support me through the process. And one of my girlfriends stayed and became my caregiver for about a week and a half with the first transplant. By the time I got to the second transplant, the CAR T cell transplant, I was a pro at what everything that needed to happen and take place. So the second transplant, again, I couldn't have family, physical family to come around me, but I had some God sent caregivers from the community. Plus, I had contracted with a caregiver service where they came and took me down to get some of my treatment and pre-stuff before the transplant. There were people coming to offer me food. People came and sat with me for a while. So I was blessed with extended family in the community. And again, I had to have conversations, not only with family, with friends, and my community resource people, so they understood what was happening, where I was at in the process, and what I needed when the process was over with, and tried to use language where everybody understood terms and things like that. But my biggest source of help, of course, came from above, and because of that, I was okay.
So did you share with all of those people that you were going to participate in a trial? I guess when I think about it, a lot of times we are brave enough to do these things, but a lot of times when it comes to family, they may not fully understand it. And I think
They
Thomas did
did.
a good job explaining it, that he presented it to them in a way.
Hmm.
Were your families all on board when you said, I'm going to do a clinical trial? Did they
No,
have questions? They
no,
weren't on board. So
they
what kind of questions did they have, or hesitance, were they more concerned about you? How did that conversation go?
with of course with my son, his conversation was more fearful about me. He was wondering that I have the physical strength to go through a clinical trial. And like a lot of I hate to say it, but like a lot of African Americans, he too thought he had a mistrust of the medical community. Mom, how you know you're gonna get the right medicine? He actually spoke about the Tuskegee incident from years and years ago. That's the biggest thing I hear from the African American community. When you talk about research, the first thing comes to their minds is mistrust of the medical community, mistrust of if you're going to get the right medication, is the people going to treat you right, all sorts of things like that. So I put everybody at ease to let everybody know, I'm a well-informed person. I had a good team that I trusted. And if I trusted them, then I'm relaying, you should trust them. And what made me have trust in my team is any question I had, day or night, they were there to answer it. I got to go see other people when they got the stem cells taken out. I got to see that. I got to go in the labs. I talked to the lab people. I got to see the actual medicine. I got to see the company that kept the cells. I got to visit the hospital rooms. I talked to dietitians. I did everything as much as I could pre transplant, so that when I went into the transplant, I wanted to go into it with a peace of mind. And the family members, they just had to, I also had them to talk to spiritual counselors, pastors, and things like that. They, to me, had more mental distress than I did. And I referred most of them to third party counseling.
Joan, how about you? How was your family support when you shared with them that you were going to participate in a trial?
My main support was my husband. He and I talked about it. He was in on the conversation when the doctor first brought it up. So we both got the information at the same time. And I agree with others that we need someone there to have another set of ears and another set of eyes, because we, as the patients, we just don't have the ability to absorb all of the things. And then my biological family has not had a support in my life. So when the spiritual family, the church family, has replaced that. And so I don't have a void. And they've been with me through this whole journey. And all I explained to them is that I was going to go into this clinical trial. They know me, they trust my judgment. And so there wasn't a lot of questions from anyone who was going to be in providing support. And my husband and I had lots of questions. And again, like the other panelists said, if I had any questions, my husband or myself, they were answered. And, if I felt the answer wasn't sufficient or the answer was above my head, I never had a problem advocating for myself and saying, well, I don't understand what you're saying. Can you speak English? Because a lot of times the medical terms they sound like another language. But, I do believe that most teams want you to be informed. And even if that one person who's talking to you can't do it, because that's just the way they speak, that's the way their language is, you could always have, the nurses explain what's going on. So I think that if you have questions, that's the way to get rid of the fear and the doubt, because you would have the answers. And so you know a little bit more about what you're getting ready to do. But I will say that a clinical trial is no different than standard of care treatment when it comes to having a trust in a doctor who made the decision. You guys made the decision to go this route. You don't know. You never know. You don't. You can see it in black and white. You can see the side effects in black and white, but no one knows until you put the chemicals inside your body how it's going to affect you. So there's always a level of apprehensiveness, I would think. But I think that if you can get as many questions answered as possible, then you would feel more comfortable.
I think going in, it's so important that you have all your questions answered because it puts you at ease. You know what to expect, and hearing from you all as well, your experience. Zanetta, how about you? Did you have anything you'd like to add with that?
I agree just with everything the other panelists have said so far. Same thing. I had my husband. My mother was also big. She's another big researcher like me. So all I had to do, if I came home and mentioned a particular drug, oh, she was on Google researching and finding more information. So it's important to have someone that you can talk to and just kind of be another set of eyes and ears, I think.
So what surprised you most, good or bad? What were you most surprised by when it came to participating in a clinical trial? What can you share with us? Anything?
Is that question for me?
Yes, well, it's for everybody. I want everybody to touch bases on that.
Uh, for me, I was surprised by honestly how sick I got. I was surprised because when I started, I wasn't so much, uh, but the drugs do affect your body. And I wasn't quite prepared for that. You know, I had the side effects all in a list right there, but when you're going through it, it was it was just a little jolting for me, just going through that.
All right. Anybody else want to chime in? What kind of surprises, if any? I mean, and there may not have been any, but is there anything that you were surprised about or that you didn't expect or, something that went really well that you weren't expecting or something that was totally off the chain that was like, whoa, I didn't know that could happen.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yes.
Well, with my CAR T transplant, which just happened in November, I've had a few surprises along the way since November, and that's one reason why it's called a clinical research trial, because they don't have answers to everything, and you are the one providing the answers to some of the nuances, I would say, that came up. My personality change, I feel like I'm just sort of getting back to myself recently. And when I say my personality change, I think right after the transplant, for the first 2 or 3 months, I was very irritable. I had never been considered an irritable person. So it was everything, getting on my nerves, just little things. So, because it ain't the big things, it's a whole bunch of little things that's going on throughout the day. And then, of course, I was supposed to, I was relegated to be at home for about good 30 or 40 days. And I'm a busy person and I like to stay active and stuff. And so staying at home, just staying at home and only doing what was necessary, what was quite interesting. The other thing surprised me was my appetite. I was craving things like a pregnant woman. I was craving things that I had not eaten in 8, 9, or 10 years. I felt like a addict or something. I fell in love with these chocolate bonbons or whatever. And I just had to go to the store to get them. And I remember in the past, when I would see that kind of stuff, I could buy a box of it, put it away, might not eat it, maybe one out of every 2 weeks. I was buying them things like 2 or 3 times a week and was trying to hide them, and I couldn't hide them from myself. And I was telling my girlfriends, I said, "Oh my Lord, I feel like an addict." I was climbing up on top of the shelf trying to get them. So they was telling me, say, "D, don't be so hard on yourself. Your body is the cells are trying to settle in and do." I said, "Well, they need to hurry up and settle in because they're making me act like a fool here, craziness and stuff." So it was just quite interesting. The first 2 or 3 months, I just didn't quite know myself. I had to find a new normal of eating, physical activity, how I was relating to people. It was almost as if the CAR T cells, every area of my body, when it settled in, it was like my body was just sort of doing this shimmy of trying to adjust. And so some of the things I surprised the researchers with, they thought was funny. And then they said, "Well, don't be so hard." And one thing I was telling people, I said, if I had a headache or my eyelash fell out, I could call them and say, "Hey, my eyelashes is falling out." And they would call me back to the university and say, "Okay, let's explore that. Let's see why your eyelashes are falling out." So that was the good thing about the transplant thing. Everything went quick, quick, quick. They had fast track everything. I could say, "I'm not feeling well." Boom. they be right. They was right on it, and still on it, still on it. Yeah,
Wow. We are almost out of time, guys.
yeah.
So I want to, did anybody face barriers? Did you have any barriers, when it comes to clinical trials? The time off from work that, things like that, transportation, lodging, any of those things did you have to deal with when it came to participating in a clinical trial? Joan, anything?
No, I had been a patient, but by that time I've been a patient for a long time, so I didn't have any barriers to getting. I only lived 15 minutes from the academic institute that I go to, so I didn't have any barriers.
Thomas, how about you?
Like Joan, I didn't have barriers because I'm treated at a academic treating school, basically. Um, let's go back to Deborah real quick. Deborah, it sounds like your irritability came from dexamethasone. No, you didn't have Dex while on CAR T? I don't know what that is. Then uh, try a better place of hiding your snacks from yourself, I guess.
Don't buy them.
Um,
That's what you do. You don't buy them. You don't bring them in the house there.
yeah, but I didn't have them, but I can speak on other people. A lot of people have problems getting transportation. Most trials are done at academic centers,
Mhm.
and the people in rural areas, they don't have access to getting where they need to be because of the trial. And the bad thing about clinical trials is that they're not done in the local hospitals, and it's probably because they don't have the training there for the staff. That's probably the most detrimental part of them not having trials there. The other part is that most patients in rural areas, they only trust their local oncologist. They feel that the local oncologist is all they need, and we all know that a myeloma specialist is the way to go because you can get the best form of treatment from a myeloma specialist. So those are some of the barriers that they came across. Another is insurance. Insurance don't like to cover things like trials or other stuff. And then the only other thing is the past. Hearing, knowing like what Deborah talked about and her son, knowing what happened in the past with the studies in Tuskegee and the Henrietta Lacks and so on and so forth. That mistrust is another reasons that put barriers in front of the African American community because they already think that they're a guinea pig, and it's up to us to show them that they're not.
Thank you for sharing that, Thomas. That's why we got you all here, real people that have been through that process to really share your experience there. I'm gonna, oh my goodness, time has went by. I'm gonna ask this last question, and then we're gonna have just a couple of minutes. If somebody has questions in the audience, I want to make sure. If you could just share like a bit of advice to anybody that may be listening or listening to the recording that's thinking about a clinical trial, what kind of advice would you give them? Where would you say start here? Um, give us some advice there. How would you encourage them to talk to their family or to even bring up that conversation? If the doctor is not bringing up that conversation, what would you tell them? What would you share with them? Joan.
So for anyone who's starting a clinical trial, I would say to go to HealthTree and look up the names of the drugs, look at how the clinical trials are, and how they are handled and why. I think that it's important to have the support, like I said, of family members, but you want to make sure that you're not polluting yourself too much with a lot of negativity and stay away from people who still have that mistrust and they don't want to have anything to do with that. So staying away from the people that don't understand or are not quite where you are at. And that's okay. And that's okay because this is your journey. And I would say, whatever questions you have, just ask them and so that you can feel comfortable going forward. And, I like to say that clinical trials are essentially free. Sometimes they are able to give you support financially. But that's a double-edged sword, right? Because in the past, when you hear you're getting paid for something that you're doing with your body, that was a part of the mistrust, right? So that money that's equated with the trial itself, um, people will be very hesitant about you're going to give me money for, my body or my cells or people. That's where the mistrust comes from. But these days, it's not that way. That money that they could give you may help you with your transportation, may help you with your lodging. So a lot of, and that's true for a lot of different companies, not just clinical trial drugs. There's help with a lot of different companies. All of the pharmaceutical companies do have some type of support system, whether it may not be money, but they may have like a navigation system you could talk to people. So there's help out there. And I would say, don't let fear be the reason why you are not getting what you need. Don't let fear stop you from helping our community, because our community is not represented in these trials, and our community suffers them. And so we don't want that to happen. We want to make sure that we're part of the solution.
Thank you for sharing that, Joan. It's so true. And just I'll leave on this note, I wanted to ask, what can we do different? How can we keep the conversation going about clinical research and make it part of our normal conversation? That it's not something we're afraid to talk about, or that touchy subject that nobody wants to address or people are afraid to talk about. I think talking about clinical research, just like talking about treatment options, just like talking about stem cell transplant, it has to become part of just a normal conversation. A clinical trial is just another treatment option. And I encourage anybody that's listening, you can hear from these panelists today, most of them, their doctor brought it up to them. They're treated at major academic facilities. You may be treated at a community facility where your doctor does not mention that. You may never hear talk of the opportunity or have that opportunity. I encourage you to start that conversation. They're not asking you, you get informed and the options that's available to you. Many clinical trials now are being conducted at community facilities right there that's close to you where you are. So you don't have to travel great distances to the academic centers to participate in trials. So start asking the questions, start talking it up. Start talking with your family about clinical research. We have a course in HealthTree University that talks about clinical research, and it breaks a lot of those myths that's often associated with clinical research. And I think you all today have shared, some of the things that also addresses a lot of those myths and just made it real for a lot of people that may be tuning in or listening to the recording later. We as a Black community have to normalize clinical trials because that's what's going to get us better medicine. It's going to lead to a cure for multiple myeloma, and we all want that, right? I want that. But I think having those hard conversations and just those hard conversations with ourselves as a patient, with our families, with the doctors, but just making sure that you have everything you need. You have the answers to your questions. And if you don't know what questions to ask somebody. There's guides, there's patients like these that have been on the panel right here that's willing to share their perspective. And from what I've heard today from these panelists, being a part of a clinical trial and participating in clinical research was not bad. It was not a bad experience. And I know that that's not the norm for everyone. I definitely am not saying that, but it could be better than you expect. So I think you owe it to yourself to, at least have that conversation with your doctor about a clinical trial just to see if it may be something for you. And I think the earlier that we have those conversations in the diagnosis, it's the better. Clinical trials are not a last-ditch effort. Clinical trials are life-saving efforts. You're getting the best care and then some. Don't let that sugar pill scare you. The thought of getting the sugar pill scare you. You're going to receive, in multiple myeloma, you're going to receive the standard of care or better in a clinical trial. And most people don't understand that. So start asking the questions and educate yourself about clinical research. That's really what's going to help us move the needle when it comes to this in our communities, when it comes to blood cancer there. I see we are over the hour there. I do have, I want to thank all of the panelists that participated here. This could be a 2-hour conversation that we have here. So I do appreciate everybody for tuning in. If we have any questions, you guys see, I think Mary Lou is dropping some information in the chat there. You can find the clinical trial finder. If you're thinking about a clinical trial, go to that website and check out some information. Do you guys see the chat? Is there anything in there?
They had an amazing question I already answered, but they're asking if clinical trials are only after relapse. And I said that no, clinical trials are for many different reasons. Sometimes we think of them as a last resource, but no, clinical trials can be offered at any time.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and I know we're over time, guys. I know we are, but hang with me just a minute. And Zanetta, we didn't get to go back and really talk about your experience. So Zanetta did a clinical trial as a smoldering patient. So no, they are not just for when you relapse. A lot of clinical trials are moving up to frontline settings now.
Standard of care.
Yes, who said that? Standard of care. Who?
Standard of care is beginning to be like standard of care.
Yes, they are moving up to frontline therapy even before you're in active myeloma. There are some trials. There are observational trials that you can participate in. So don't think that trials are just you got to go in and get some medication. There are observational trials that you can participate in as well. I'm going to throw this one out there because this is one that I just thought about. The PROMISE study. That is an observational trial. It's a good one that I encourage you to talk with your family members about. It looks at the precursor condition of MGUS. They have it at, I know it's Dana-Farber has it. I think it's also at Emory. You can participate, but get some information. Maybe we can put that in the follow-up deck when we send it out about that. But that's an observational study. But just know your options that's out there. Okay, I think I need to start winding up. Thank you all for joining this afternoon. We could go on and on because it's so good. Panelists, thank each and every one of you. I appreciate you coming. Thomas, thank you. You're in the treatment chair. That means a lot to have you here to share your story while you're receiving treatment. All those familiar faces that I see out there, or familiar names in the box. Thanks for joining us this afternoon. I think I got some outro announcements. If you guys can hang with me, and I'm going to read through the outro announcements. If I can find those on here somewhere, hang with me. Don't go nowhere. Let's see. We got
I can share my screen if that's
you
okay.
got your screen, girl. Thank you. I appreciate that because I'm not the most tech savvy person when it comes here. So.
No worries.
I don't have anything on my screen now, so I'm just gonna have to.
Okay, your slides are ready.
Okay, you got them up there now?
Yes, can you all see them?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
You cannot see them? Oh, yeah.
I can't see them. I'm just gonna go with the outro here. As you leave today, we'd appreciate you taking that 2 to 3 minute survey. If you haven't visited the Black Myeloma Health website, definitely jump over there and check out things. Connect to Cures this Saturday, Orlando, Florida. If you're in the Orlando area, we would love for you to join us for that event. Come on by. I don't remember the exact location, but we'll get that out to you if that's something you're interested in participating in. Registration is open for the 4th annual Black Health Movement event. It's happening August the 15th and 16th. This is a collective effort for us to raise awareness about blood cancers and clinical research in the Black communities and to support research. It is a virtual event. But I am encouraging you to get together with those in your local community, get out there and get to moving. We're not asking you to run a 5K, not even walk a 5K, but whatever floats your boat when it comes to moving. You can walk, run, swim, get on your bike, do whatever, get in the garden, whatever gets you to moving. Get registered today. I think early bird registration goes off in just a few days. You can get one of our cool limited edition t-shirts to wear. If you register before July the 1st, we'll make sure that we get that to you so you can wear it for the event day. Now, I talked a little bit about those Connect Cures. Those are free in-person events where you can connect with other patients, learn from doctors, and discover key resources with our HealthTree team. We have some official dates. I think we did the one in Macon was a few weeks ago. We did the one in Peoria. We got the one coming up in Orlando, and then there's one in Harrisonburg, Virginia next month, and then Fresno. So if any of these cities are close to where you live, we would love for you to come out and join us. And if you have questions, don't hesitate to contact us. We're happy to help. Take a moment to thank our sponsors again. Without them, this would not have happened. GSK, Pfizer, Johnson & Johnson, and Amgen. And before we wrap up, I just want to say thank you, each of you, for helping us build a strong multiple myeloma community here. Your support means a lot to us, and I am grateful to have each of you to join. See my email there on the slide deck. If you got any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to me about our programs or anything there. I'm always happy to help. So enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you for taking some time out of your day to join us this afternoon. I look forward to seeing you soon on another webinar or somewhere out there in myeloma life.